All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. I'm Emily Douglas, the online editor of Business Grapevine, and today I'm with Sascha Grosskopf, Head of European Demand Generation at Cornerstone, who will be discussing how to attract and retain the best talent in a way that is smarter and faster. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them at any point. I'll be monitoring them and putting them to Sascha at the end. Over to you, Sascha.
Thank you, and happy afternoon to all of you across Europe. My name is Sascha Grosskopf, Head of European Demand Gen. Thanks for the introduction, and today's webinar is really about how HR can start to make things simple, faster, smarter, and better. And today it's really about attract, hire, develop, and retain the best talent. So really a recruiting focus, but how we can align recruiting to all other elements of the scene. To give a face to the name who's talking to you, yeah, that's me from my LinkedIn profile. On the left hand side you see a cartoonist story from last week in San Francisco. Feel free to connect. And what are we talking about? Obviously we're talking about who is talking to you, about storytelling and disconnection, about 4 different big steps to make things simple, smarter, faster, and better. Before at the end we'll tell you about a nice, cool invite we'll share with you. So who's Cornerstone? For those of you who don't know Cornerstone, Cornerstone is one of the biggest and fastest growing telemanagement and HCM, HR software providers. We're headquartered out of California. We have subsidiaries all over the world. Our European headquarters is in London, and the next big office is obviously in Paris and in Düsseldorf and Munich. So I'm based out of the Düsseldorf office in Germany, and I'm so happy and proud to be here with you. So this year, actually next week, we celebrate our 17th anniversary. So we're getting the whole team together to really create a huge employee engagement level. On the Cornerstone platform, we're counting 30 million users in total learning, in performance management, in recruiting. Globally, we have more than 2,900 clients operating in 191 countries. So how do we define unified human capital management? So it's really across the whole employee life cycle, from the first click on apply to onboarding and the holistic learning throughout the whole life cycle, to HR management and admin function, to performance and succession, and obviously skill management. But Cornerstone is not only a software provider, a developer of software and implementation and consulting company to help you as an organization. We are also a company where people are working for. So it's not only that we're telling you we think what works best for you, we practice everything we preach basically on our own behalf. So we are ranked as one of the top leading employers in the Bay Area. So we're competing with all the big B2C tech companies, and we are constantly ranked amongst the top 20 of the global tech companies to work for. From a recruiting standpoint, our recruiting experts, our active sources, and our employer branding and attraction guys are facing various challenges across the year because Cornerstone is so successful, and I mentioned it, we are so fast growing, not in terms only of clients, but on the other side, obviously also in terms of employees. We're growing between 25 and 30% year by year. So you can imagine how hard this is to attract people in the HR industry, in the IT industry, in today's environment where everyone's talking about skill shortages and difficulties to attract people. So we obviously have our own employer branding team, but now let's quickly start with a story what to talk about. I mean, obviously, marketing, employer branding, we have something in common. We are more the storytellers in any organization. So we know how a good story should listen, that people should be attracted, people should share the story, ideally on social media. I mean, that's common sense across HR and marketing. But very often, we see a kind of disconnect, for example, from my position in marketing, between sales. Marketing creates great stories, roll them out with high cost and intent, and through all different media channels. And at the end, the customer comes into the shop and is maybe frustrated, maybe not super happy. So just to give you an example, Red Bull claim, I think everyone knows about Red Bull gives you wings. I mean, obviously in advertisement, people are forgiving. People want to be entertained and listen to a good story. People forgive that. If you drink the Red Bull, obviously you can't fly. But if we put this now into our own context between HR and employer branding, or between organizations and employer branding, if in employer branding we proclaim we are the best place to work, we are the greatest place to work, we got all employer awards that you can think about, we're the best place, we offer flexible work structures and whatsoever, and then you get the employee on board, and at the end the employee does not get their wings. So I think in advertisement people are more forgiving than when it comes to employer branding. Therefore we often see the same disconnect between HR in general, between organizations and employer branding. So we need to be very careful that the external employer branding is not only an advert that we put out to attract the people, because then people get frustrated and disappear very soon. So we need to connect and make sure employer branding and HR and the holistic organization is connected. Another very cool example I found is obviously the 6 different perspectives to a consumer or a product for a consumer. So there are different elements, how a consumer explains it, how the project leader understood it, how the consultant described it, how the project was documented, installed, and what the customer really needs. Everyone knows that there are hundreds and if not thousands of these cool pictures out there, but can't we easily translate this cool product environment into HR functions? Isn't that more like what employer branding says, what then the recruiter tells anyone, how HR really looks like, how the leaders act, and how peers collaborate, and what the employee expects? Isn't that any massive disconnect very often what we see? So most of you might know Stephen Sinek. He's one of the most clicked and visited speakers on the TED Talent Talks, which is natively, for example, integrated into our platform as one of the unique prepositions. He talks from a marketing and brand perspective about the what, the how, and the why. So obviously there is a slight mistake, and the middle must be the why. So classical employer branding is a conventional way. It's advertising from the outside to the inside. So it's basically everyone's talking about what makes us cool, how we do it, and then why we do it. But if we're doing the holistic HR approach in the right way and manner, it becomes an inside out and a remarkable tool, and that creates the employee perception. Imagine everything works smoothly from performance management. People get their careers in progress, they feel remarkable, accepted, they feel rewarded, and then they go out not only to Glassdoors or all the other employee retention platforms out there in the field, but they talk to their peers, they talk to people who ask them on LinkedIn, hey, do you think it would be a good step to work for your current company? That becomes the remarkable inside-out view and the employee perception rather than just the external candidate perception. From a technical perspective, we're in Cornerstone, we talk about the HR supply chain. So everything in an organization from our perspective, how we treat it and how we treat our employees, can only work seamlessly together from an inside and outside perspective if attraction, development, hiring, and retention work seamlessly together. If one of the wheels stops, we have a problem. Either we don't get the right people on board, we can't retain them, we can't attract them anymore, or if we stop to develop them, the whole machine stops working. So from the Fosway Group, we have a critical realities research from last year of the most active tech areas where companies want to invest. And obviously, it's not a surprise that very often the HR functions are siloed and disconnected. So UK companies see onboarding, talent succession, employee engagement, analytics, and performance as the most active tech areas where companies want to invest in. So that seems a bit like a surprise, right? Because, I mean, analytics is a bit new. Employee engagement is a bit of a buzzword of the last 5 years. But talent and succession management, performance management, and onboarding, isn't that something that's in the field for 20 to 30 years already? That's in place where everyone would expect to have a solution, to have a process in place here. So let's move on. How can we in Cornerstone help to make recruiting simple? I mean, we were talking a lot about how to attract the people, how to avoid the disconnect between employer branding and the attraction part in the outer world, on job boards, on YouTube, on social media channels. I mean, recruiting has a long history, and we're far away from the typical newspaper adverts on a Saturday morning to get the new employees and the high potentials into our company. So it shouldn't be that difficult, right? So, I mean, Leonardo had a very nice sentence very early. But nevertheless, it's still a bit complicated. So one of our surveys that we've done last year with IDC, we still see a massive disconnect between HR and the line of business managers. So that is unique in our survey with IDC. Half of the respondents are line of business managers, so people from in the organization dealing with HR processes, and the other 50% were HR senior decision makers running the HR processes. So HR is the opinion that 60% are happy with their tools to recruit, retain, while only half of the line of business managers think that we have the right tools to recruit and retain them. So a massive disconnect here. While HR thinks to 30% only, hey, our processes are really cool. There's no really a source of frustration, while 41% of the line of business managers are kind of frustrated from HR processes. So how can we disconnect or create a connection between line of business managers and our HR processes, especially in recruiting? And obviously it connect to the best candidate experience in the world. So how can this look like? From a candidate experience, it must be seamless. So you can't talk in employer branding about the world's best employer and the most customized and coolest YouTube videos when the whole recruiting channel is then very boring at the end, and you just have to send a letter with your whole CV pack in because there is no proper ATS or recruiting system up and running. So in today's world, everything must be mobile. It must be mobile friendly, especially in countries where we have a remote culture or a commuting culture. People apply via mobile. So if you just have a standard career page, it's time to change. A single portal access so that applicants can manage their profiles, job submissions. And obviously, stop building the talent pools. Stop being connected for future jobs and build the profiles of the relevant candidates. That all allows you to run faster recruiting. So with a talent pool, you can easily scan through multiple candidates and resumes at one time. And that's not for recruiters. That works for line of business managers as well. So if a line of business manager, for example, has a vacancy in his team, you can give this person access to the talent pool, and the person or the line of business manager can then search through the whole talent pool to find the right candidates, hand back over to recruiting team to get them in front of them. So if we can do it faster, we can provide the whole organization. Doesn't matter if you move a line of business manager into a hiring manager position or if you're the recruiter and active sourcer. In our system, we have Boolean research functions and query builders. We have candidate flagging, so pretty much like everyone knows from Amazon and eBay. We can build our baskets. We can build our profiles. We can rate whatever we want. Everything in one single system. A major point of frustration for everyone who's in the hiring process isn't that you get per applicant around 25 emails. Hey, we have a new candidate for you. Hey, now we have the CV for you. Hey, do you have time next Tuesday for an interview? Oh, maybe next Thursday works better for you. All right, can you meet this person next Friday? So that's just 6 emails for one application, rather than having one-stop shop for a line of business managers who has a prime job to do over time, to tell them, hey, these are the 5 candidates, quickly screen them in the system, benchmark them, we get in touch with them, we provide you with a selection, and it's a single point of contact where you can approve or decline any meeting, any candidate, and everything stored centrally. So you don't miss any information. There is no cut and paste anymore. But now we have the candidate on board. We've attracted the candidate with cool employer branding. The candidate ran through the whole candidate experience, and we got him in front of his potential manager. Now it's time to get them on board and to train them. So this is one of the biggest fields right now what people are concerned about. It's about onboarding. So how can we make this faster? Blaise Pascal once said, a very cool sentence, "I'm writing a long letter because I don't have time to make it short." So do we still have long-lasting, inefficient onboarding processes because we don't have the time to make them shorter? Not sure how many of you were ever frustrated about day one when you started in your new company. It happened quite often to me that I arrived in a new position. Day one, my potential manager was out for a meeting. HR was kind of, "Oh yeah, maybe I have time for you in 2 hours." You went to the coffee machine, you didn't know anyone. Finally, HR had time for you. And the first thing they asked me is, "Hey, can you please put all your personal data and records into our HR system?" Really? I had 7 to 10 interviews. I presented myself to the recruiting team, to the HR team, to all relevant stakeholders in my department. Is this a company who attracted me, that the company is cool, flexible, and the best place to work? Do they think they make the best work out of my time when the first day is kind of halfway useless, and then they ask me for the second half of day one to put all my CV and records and details into an HR system, details they have already for about 6 months, because that's the average recruiting time from the first touch point to day one. So how can we make this very seamless? But that brings us to one problem. That's a definition of speed when we're talking about faster. Because everyone in the organization and the whole process has a total different perception of what speed is. Obviously, the candidate constantly wants feedback and the transparency, which step of the process he's into. The line manager has very ad hoc requests and wants to avoid skill gaps and vacancies in its team. HR very often has to react super reactive and tries to be quick and efficient, while the C-suite is more looking from top of the whole senior and say, "Hey, we need proper succession planning to avoid skill gaps and to make the whole machinery running." But coming back to myself as an onboarding experience, so in a Cornerstone world, after I sign my contract, I'm in a pre- and onboarding process. So that means after I send back the signed contract, I get access to the Preboarding portal. That works like the company Facebook, if you like. I meet my peers and my stakeholders online. I can check with them. I can check, "Hey, Tom, our UK marketing manager, he likes golf, he likes gardening, he just moved into a new house." So if I meet him first time at the coffee machine, I can welcome and, "Hey, Tom, nice to meet you in person," rather than "Hello, who are you?" So way straighter onboarding. And imagine all my personal records, all my social insurance details, all my bank details are already in the system in the pre-boarding portal because I have time. I'm free of mind and I want to stay in touch. There are researchers out there in the field that 50% of people who sign a contract don't start their job, because after the first contract they sign, they go to different interviews, they get higher salary, they meet more attractive people and companies, and they don't start their job. And any recruiting process is highly costly, so we should avoid to let the people go after a long-lasting recruiting and attraction process and day one, because that's a gap we have to avoid. And obviously, once I'm on board and I get my non-confidential training up front, my day one starts with a classical onboarding process. I get all my compliance training, I get all my product training, I get training on all the processes and everything that I need to learn about the organization, the products, and the workflows. I get it seamless. I know the tool, so there is no one who had to explain me, hey, this is our HR tool, this is what you need to do now to get your IT compliance training, this is what you have to do to ask for your business cards, for your laptop, because that's all done in the pre-boarding phase, right after the contract. We don't let the companies go. So now, me as a candidate, I have arrived. I ran through a seamless pre-boarding phase. I'm in a proper onboarding phase, and now after lots of training, it's time to perform. But very often, performance and succession is also kind of frustration in companies, as we know. And Oscar Wilde once said a very, very famous sentence. So succession planning and performance, it's basically a clear process, but everyone has a different understanding and people are so frustrated. But that's a major concern because people leave because of they are frustrated of, I don't get my development training, my compensation review time sucks and I don't get the right salary, my performance process is not good. Imagine you're a sales guy and you have to wait 4 months for your bonus. People are frustrated, people tell this to the outer world. And that reflects to the employer brand that we need to know about. How does it really look like in European companies? Again, some figures from our last year's survey we've done with IDC. So nearly 50% of companies we've surveyed have annual performance process. So I think Josh Burson at Deloitte, they're currently talking for about 3 years about flexible performance processes. On a project base, mid-year, 50% of European companies are still saved with annual performance processes. When we go down to employee development, the majority of companies at least provide regular training and reviews of training processes. But if it comes to employee compensation, the majority of 50%, or even we add the semi-annual stuff, the majority of companies, they just take a look once a year into employee salary. But isn't this, in today's world where everyone's working in virtual groups, where everyone's kind of working flexible in teams on high performance with high pressure, wouldn't this be time to review the performance after project end? Wouldn't this be time to review development and training before any project on a midterm scale? What kind of training do I as Sascha need to be given to be ready for my next project? And wouldn't it be good after a super overperformance maybe in the last project or the last 2 projects to give me a kind of salary increase? That's what at least the millennials, what we're so far very often talking about, what they're used to. They get points, they get scores, they get rewards, and that's what they expect. And that transfers into the whole organization. So how can we make this happen in Cornerstone? So very easily, in terms of how do the employees feel, we can send easily and quick impulse surveys to the entire organization, to departments. That can be initiated from any single employee. So I can send to a selected handful of peers, hey, how do you think the last project worked? That can come from a line of business manager, that can come from HR as a wider annual or quarterly project. So we increase the engagement because the people are welcome. We recognize their feedback into a proper way. And we tell the people where their career can progress to. When I look back at my past career, in any interview process, I get asked, where do you want to be in the next 5 years? I said, to be fair, I'm just starting my new job. I have no idea where I really want to be in the next 5 years. I had some ideas, but that's more a dream. With a proper career development plan, you as a line manager, you as HR, can have an introduction or a discussion with me about my career progression. You can tell me, I'm an associate now, what the next step, and where can we help you? Everyone can go into the system and say, hey, I'm maybe not happy, I'm maybe moving back to mobile, I want to do something different. What are different options? What are career paths in my organization? We have one employee, one colleague of mine based in London. He is now for 7 years with Cornerstone. He's in his 5th position now. So that's the way how people transit through our whole organization. That's what modern succession management is. And that's how it should look like. But if we look into the total talent search, if we are a line of business manager, a department head or whatsoever, rather than just asking our peer or HR, hey, I have a vacancy, we can go to our entire talent pool. And talent pool in this relation does not only mean everyone who applied, that's everyone who told us in the system, hey, I'm happy to take another job maybe in the company. And when we select, for example, Jackie, we can easily select what her performance reviews are, when she's ready for the next job. So we have a very transparent view what's going on in the entire organization. And that goes from line of business managers to department heads to everyone who should have access to manage this process from HR. So we really build a seamless process, and that obviously ends up in a robust talent pipeline because we have a clear transparency where we get very often the high performance talent from, or where do we have an impact of loss, where do we need to talk with the people because losing high performers is super high cost and in total not good for the company, right? So the next big step in total HCM, what can we do better here? Let's start with another quote. Freedom is nothing but a chance to be better, where enslavement is certainty of the worst. So we have to do things differently. But is everything really better? So clearly we need to test. Let's start with some survey facts from last year's survey. So the highest scaled improvement areas in Europe are clearly ranked with faster HR processes, and that's pretty much what line of business managers and HR have in common, and employee performance analytics. Analytics is a new field. Very often it comes to town under the track of big data, and people are kind of, is that really what we can do? I'm not sure. But that at the end seems pretty easy, because in our system we have all the data from the recruiting process to preboarding to onboarding, learning and performance, career pauses. So we can provide any team leader, any HR person with clear dashboards, from hiring manager dashboards to recruiting dashboards to team dashboards to the wider field. Clearly trackable with all KPIs, and across KPIs and all data we have and collect, we can run very simple analytics into our talent programs and obviously build clearer strategies, what we want to do. We get health checks and intelligent information about. And obviously that's available again for team leaders, for department heads, for the leadership, and for HR. And one of the highest areas in analytics is to predict the flight risk. Because that at the end comes back to what are the people that we need to attract and who are the people we need to recruit. If we know who's in flight risk, maybe we can avoid to lose them, and anyone we avoid to lose, we don't need to replace. So that's really cool. Based on all the information in the data, we get clear information. What do we have to change to retain this person? Because very often companies are aware that someone is not happy when the person says, hey, that's my letter of resignation. I'm gone by tomorrow. So very often a big problem, high cost process, and we let people go. If we can predict who's at flight risk, we can change it. If there is a problem with a manager, we can change the teams. If there are different processes, we can work on the process. If there are development problems, we can work on them. And at the end, that gives you a gap analysis. And that brings us back to the whole beginning of the story in terms of employer branding. Employer branding is very advanced in measuring clicks on career pages But without a workforce planning and a gap analysis on a mid to long-term side, how should we know who are the people we want to attract on social media, on the job boards? If we're just looking for predictive jobs, that's pretty much old school. But with clear workforce planning, analytics, and gap planning, we know maybe up to 12 months in advance that based on opening another subsidiary or plant in Brazil or elsewhere, we have to hire people. So we're moving to strategic recruiting, to strategic succession planning very clearly. So at the end of the story, so 10 steps for real employer engagement and employer branding. Number one is build a consistent HR supply chain. Break down the silos. That's very 68 style, but we have to break down the silos. Align the future talent needs with the company strategy. So if there is no transparency, we're lost. Make sure onboarding is great. Obviously, we have to plan for middle and long term. Otherwise, we constantly remaining in a reactive mode. Let's create career paths for employees. We need to tell our peers, this is where I expect you to be. Is that okay for you? Or do you have a different view? Rather than asking people, where do you want to be in 5 years? Foster collaboration in cool tools. People are used to work in a day-to-day business in WhatsApp and Facebook. Why don't we leverage these functionalities in an organization? So at the end, build a consistent inside-out employer brand coming from HR supply chain, coming from the whole employer-employee engagement. And obviously get mid and top management buy-in, because if this is a top-down, bottom-up HR process, we can hardly succeed. We remain in successful silos, but we can never succeed over a whole company. And obviously, use data and tools for faster decisions. We need to step back from gut feeling and talk about, I think this might be good. We have data to fill this knowledge gap. We have data to predict and to analyze what the situation is and what will be coming next. And obviously, create an agile feedback structure. These are 10 steps for the perfect employee engagement and how we can help you. So if you like to connect, you can find me on LinkedIn. You can send me an email if you like. You can find all the information about Cornerstone on Cornerstone On Demand Co. UK. You can connect with Cornerstone or with myself on Twitter if you like. And last but not least, I was talking about the invite. We are currently on an HR Make It roadshow across Europe. We're coming through 13 European cities. We're talking about digitalization in HR. We have another edition of the 2017 survey with IDC, where we present the results of more than 1,400 respondents. So we are able to compare HR processes and the status quo of UK companies versus Nordic companies versus French and German companies. And obviously that's a perfect network to network with your peers and with HR stakeholders. Obviously we have a super great partner. We're so proud, for example, in London and Manchester, so nearby you. And we're partnering with Aon Hewitt. They provide really great intelligence from their side, from the strategic consultative part. They have very good insights into their own European survey that will be presented. So just click in Cornerstone On Demand Co. UK HR Make It Tour and register yourself. Tom will then take care that you will be registered and approved. Happy to see you there. Thank you for your time today, and I would open the session for questions if there are any.
Hi, Sascha. Thanks for that. We do have some questions that have come through. The first one was from Jake, who has said, I loved your points about employer branding. Did you have any tips on improving the candidate experience, especially for non-successful applicants?
Oh yeah, Jack, that's a very, very good question. I mean, that's obviously one of the major points. I mean, if we know who we target with our employee branding and advertisement efforts, we need to make sure we attract the right people. If we attract the wrong people, obviously we have non-successful applicants. And there are tools out there, because either you can refer them to another job within your company, because this person might not have the clear insight that there are different jobs he could apply for, and maybe he just applied for the wrong position. Maybe this happens in 4 months' time, maybe this happens later. But clearly, on a workforce planning perspective, I mean, if you're, for example, targeting only for marketing managers, and at the end you search for sales managers because midterm the strategy has changed, you have to reject all marketing managers. So clearly the workforce planning, the recruiting planning and advertising efforts have to come inside out and have to get clear buy-in from the top management. Obviously with the creative, there are cool agencies out in the field that can help you.
Okay, fantastic. Thanks for that. We have a couple more questions too. Another one was big data in HR. What real benefits does this bring?
That's a very good question and a very often asked question. So big data in HR. I mean, we have some great case studies, primarily from companies with loads of similar job profiles, so service centers, call centers, and whatsoever. So we could make sure that we increase the retention rate, for example, in the massive US call center by 35% just by using big data and analytics and recruiting analytics to hire the right people, to retain them longer. And obviously, if you're in a call center and the retention decreased by 30%, the quality of the service center increased heavily. That at the end makes happier clients and more revenue for the company. So very easy examples. In terms of internal analytics, if you really can run analytics against performance and learning, that's the easiest benefit to gratify that your investment in the next training and sending someone to a conference ends up in great performance, and you can measure this and you can predict it. So that's the first time that really HR is capable, based on numbers, to showcase an ROI of their investment very often. So that's very easy to predict what will happen.
Fantastic, thank you. We've had another question come through from Dream, who has said, what tools or software would you recommend for HR or recruitment tracking?
Yeah, as I'm working for Cornerstone, I obviously, that's an easy question. But obviously I'm fully aware that there are hundreds and thousands of cool tools in place that can help you with more recruiting analytics and attraction tools. And the cool part in Cornerstone is Cornerstone acts as a platform as a service. So if you act with, for example, our system as an ATS with all our embedded recruiting analytics capabilities via our platform, you can easily integrate, for example, the cool recruiting analytics and channel analytics functionalities from Vonk from the Netherlands, for example. You can get all the information from Universum Global into our system that helps you in channel efficiency and to attract the millennials. And there are more and more tools coming to our platform that can help you on top of a full sufficient unified talent program.
Fantastic, thanks for that. We've got another question through that's quite good. Having an HR supply chain sounds great, but where do we start and how long does it take to implement?
That's a very good question, and obviously one of the major concerns, because everyone start thinking, oh my God, I have to change everything at once. No. So clearly, very often, most of our clients, they start with pilots in a different department, in one part of the company, in one country, in one subsidiary, so wherever you like. For example, you can start easily with the internal process of learning and performance to build the bridge of learning investment and increase of performance. Obviously, once you have implemented learning very successful, the step to proper onboarding and preboarding process is very easy. And from there you can grow then into recruiting space. And once you collect all the data, succession planning and analytics becomes possible. But how long does it take? So we have different models, and we can get you live with, for example, learning and performance within 6 weeks. Absolutely no doubt our software is that easy and scalable that we can get you live with the learning and performance process in your organization within 6 weeks. There are different other models that we're offering, but very flexible. So there are even processes where we can ask our customer to run the whole implementation themselves if they want it, if they provide the right project team. So there is no risk that you have to start with all the 15 modules and all processes at once.
Great, thanks for that. We've had another question come through from Dan that says, this software sounds great, but do you have any advice on proving its ROI to the board?
Obviously, we have great case studies. We have great clients helping us and showcasing ROIs. Obviously, once you talk to us in more detail what your current processes are, we can definitely help you with different ROIs, which part of the module can deliver to the entire company, on which level and in which KPI you want to measure. That's clearly absolutely no problem, because we are clearly about everything must be measurable.
Great, thanks. One that sort of might be similarly linked is how do we get the management buy-in for these projects?
So the biggest question is always, how do you start to build a business case? And the big question is always, do I get the budget, or do we stick to our processes? Obviously, Excel doesn't cost you anything, but what are the risks or the costs of working everything in Excel? I mean, I gave you the example of the sales manager who got his bonus 4 months late because the performance and the performance process is so weak and so slow. So if you lose your top performing sales reps because of the weak performance process, you might lose easily 1 or 2 million of revenue, and you get replacements of weak sales reps because you can't replace your top performers. So this might be a very top level case. We need a proper performance process to retain our people and to make sure they get their bonus in time when they deserve it and not too late. Because obviously when you deserve something and you get it far too late, you get frustrated and you leave. And there are lots of other examples in learning and performance in the entire organization where you can easily grant how faster you are, how seamless the processes are, how leaner your organization are, and to free time of HR folks to do more talent work rather than being more admins. Because very often in today's organizations, HR managers are HR admins, maintaining admins and not working properly with the talent to guarantee career progression. I hope that makes sense.
Great, thanks for that, Sascha. Well, the entire thing was incredibly informative, and thank you all for tuning in. Before we say good day to everybody, is there anything else you'd like to add, Sascha?
I'm super happy to be here. Thank you all for joining in. Have a good rest of the day.
Okay, fantastic. Just to add, this will be available to download on HR Grapevine's website, so if you would like to listen to it again, please just head over there. And thank you all for listening. Thanks again, Sascha. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.